This might be the most controversial thing I've ever said about the Dallas Cowboys, but I need you to hear me out because what I'm about to break down changes everything about how we should view Brandon Aubrey. And honestly, before we dive into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button because here at Cowboys Live News, we don't just react to the headlines, we dig into the numbers, the film, the contract details, and we bring you the real story the second it drops. So if you're a true Cowboys fan that wants the inside track, hit subscribe right now and let's get into this thing because the Brandon Aubrey situation is way more complicated than most people realize, and I spent an entire day going through every single stat, every contract comparable, and every possible scenario before coming to you with this take. And look, I know emotions are running high in Cowboys Nation right now because Brandon Aubrey has been incredible for us. He's been clutch, he's been a weapon, and the idea of potentially losing him makes a lot of fans sick to their stomach. But here's the thing, we have to separate our feelings from the business of football, and when you actually look at what's happening behind the scenes with these contract negotiations, it tells a very interesting story that nobody seems to be talking about. So let's start with the facts because the facts might surprise you, and the crazy part is the Cowboys and Aubrey's camp have reportedly been negotiating this contract for roughly 8 months now. Talking since before last season even kicked off, and when negotiations drag on that long, it tells you one thing loud and clear: these two sides are nowhere close on money. This isn't about the number of years or some minor contract language, this is about cold hard cash and what Brandon Aubrey's representation believes he's worth versus what the Jones family is willing to pay. And here's where things get really interesting because I went through every kicker in the NFL this season and pulled the accuracy numbers, and what I found shocked me because the narrative out there is that Brandon Aubrey is automatic, that he's a guaranteed 3 points every time he steps on the field, that he's the best kicker in football and maybe the best kicker we've ever seen. But the numbers tell a different story, and I'm not saying this to hate on Aubrey. I love the guy, he's a Cowboy, and I want him here, but we need to look at this objectively because his field goal percentage has actually declined each of the last 3 seasons. It went from the high 90s in his first year to around 85% this past season, and when you rank all the kickers in the NFL by accuracy this season, you know where Brandon Aubrey lands. He was the 19th most accurate kicker in football. Let me say that again for the people in the back: the 19th most accurate kicker, not first, not fifth, not even top 10, 19th. And I know what some of you are thinking. Well, he attempts way more long field goals than anybody else, and that's true. The Cowboys led the league in 50-plus yard field goal attempts, and Aubrey had more 60-yard attempts than almost anyone in football. But here's the question we need to ask ourselves: why is that happening? Because Dallas supposedly had a top 3 offense this year, so why are we constantly settling for 50- and 60-yard field goal tries instead of punching it into the end zone? And the answer might frustrate you, because multiple reports suggest the play calling gets conservative when the Cowboys reach midfield because the coaching staff knows they have a big leg back there. So instead of staying aggressive and going for touchdowns, they protect field position and settle for long attempts. And Aubrey's own offensive coordinator has publicly said he doesn't like depending on the kicker as much as they do. So this isn't me making things up, this is coming from inside the building. And when you factor all of this in, you start to understand why the contract talks have stalled, because Aubrey's camp probably believes he's a generational weapon that deserves historic money, and the Cowboys are probably looking at these accuracy numbers, these declining percentages, and saying, hold on, let's pump the brakes here. And this brings us to the scenario that has Cowboys fans losing their minds: the possibility of tendering Brandon Aubrey instead of signing him to a long-term deal. So let me explain how this works, because if the Cowboys place a first-round tender on Aubrey, it means any team can negotiate with him and try to sign him to an offer sheet, and if that happens, Dallas has 2 choices: they can match the offer and keep him, or they can let him walk and receive a first-round pick as compensation. And I know a lot of fans hear that and immediately say, no way, we're not trading our kicker for a draft pick. But let me ask you something: would you trade a kicker who was the 19th most accurate in the league for a chance to add another first-round talent to this roster? Because when you look at the math, it starts to make a lot of sense. The average first-round pick plays somewhere between 500 and 900 snaps in their rookie season alone. Brandon Aubrey had maybe 40 to 50 plays last year. That's it. That's 12 times fewer opportunities to impact the game versus what a first-round pick would give you. And before you say, well, draft picks can bust, think about what 3 first-round picks could do for this team, because Dallas already has our own first-rounder. If they got one for Aubrey, that's 2, and you can package picks to move up in the draft. You could target a generational pass rusher. You could trade for an established star like some of the names that have been floating around in league circles. You could completely transform this roster. And here's the part that really changed my perspective when I looked at the 2 kickers who played in the Super Bowl this year. Either of them were elite by the accuracy numbers. One was ranked 20th, the other 21st in field goal percentage. So all this talk about needing the best kicker in football to win a championship, it's just not supported by the evidence. The Patriots' kicker in the Super Bowl was in the bottom third of field goals made, and his team still got there. Meanwhile, Dallas is out here acting like Brandon Aubrey is the key to everything. And look, I get it, we've watched this man drill game winners, we've seen him come through in clutch moments, and that creates an tie-in bond, but emotions can't drive roster decisions. And here's something else that might blow your mind. Nick Folk, one of our former kickers from like a decade ago, was actually the most accurate kicker in the entire NFL this past season among guys with 20-plus attempts. So all this fear about not being able to replace Aubrey, the idea that kickers like him are impossible to find, it's just not true. The league is full of soccer players who can drill 50-yarders now. That's the prototype. Teams are finding these guys everywhere. Cam Little in Jacksonville set records this year. As a rookie, he went 2 for 2 from 60-plus yards. Meanwhile, Aubrey was 3 for 4 from that range, and Little is on a tiny rookie contract, so the value equation matters here. And I'm not saying the Cowboys should definitely let Aubrey walk. I want him signed. I want him in that silver and blue for the next 5 years, but there's a number that makes sense, and there's a number that's crazy. And if his representative Ion is demanding something in the stratosphere like reports suggest, then maybe the smart move is to tender him, let another team determine his market value, and then decide whether to match. And the beautiful part about that strategy is it takes the guesswork out of it. The Cowboys don't have to argue about what Aubrey is worth, they just let the market decide. And if some team offers him $15 million a year, Dallas can look at that and say, okay, is that reasonable for a kicker who was 19th in accuracy, or do we take the first-round pick and invest those resources elsewhere? And I genuinely believe that's where the Jones family's head is at right now. They're running the numbers, they're looking at the comparables, they're seeing that kickers just don't have as much impact as fans want to believe, and they're weighing their options carefully. And as much as it might sting to hear this from a fellow Cowboys diehard, the data supports being cautious here, because you don't need a Hall of Fame kicker to win a Super Bowl. You need a solid one, and solid kickers are findable, especially now that teams have figured out the soccer player pipeline. Now, does this mean I want Aubrey gone? Absolutely not. If they can get a deal done at a reasonable number, I'm thrilled, but if his camp is demanding something outrageous, and the only alternative is a first-round tender that could net Dallas a premium pick, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's a bad outcome, because it's not, and I know some of you are going to disagree, and that's fine. That's what the comment section is for. I want to hear your take on this. Would you tender Brandon Aubrey if it meant potentially getting a first-round pick, or are you in the camp that says pay the man whatever he wants and lock him up long-term? Because there's no wrong answer here, it just depends on how you value the position and where you think this team's championship window sits. And real quick, if you made it this far in the video, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, because these deep dives take hours to put together, and knowing that Cowboys Nation is rocking with us makes it all worth it. So subscribe, hit the bell, and drop your thoughts below, because at the end of the day this is about one thing: bringing a Super Bowl back to Dallas. And whether Brandon Aubrey is part of that journey, or whether his potential departure helps us build a more complete roster, the goal stays the same. We want that 6th ring, and every decision from here on out has to be made with that in mind. So let me know, Cowboys Nation, what's the move? Sign Aubrey at all costs or tender him and see what happens. I'll be reading every single comment, and I'll catch you in the next one.